So I'd love to wish you all very, very welcome to this session, and we're going to talk about growth, team development, and also organizational matters. As I said, you probably read it. And I'm delighted to be here. When I was repeating in my car the first line, the first words to say, I was going, I'm excited to be here. And that is the truth, but it sounds more like exaggerating something. It's not very Swedish to say excited, but I am excited. So the plan is that I'm gonna go walk you through, try to actually convince you that we're gonna talk about something that is very, very important and that you're gonna find is actually the key to success. I will soon introduce myself more, but before I do that, I would say that I do have experiences from company actually losing in growth because of they kind of missed out the human, the people matters. They missed out how to have people to actually join and everyone walking or moving in the same direction to the same goals. And they also missed out the relation processes. And we're going to come back to why we kind of miss out those things. I think one of the reasons is that we think that we are decent people, we know how to communicate, so we kind of do it meanwhile, while we are focusing on strategies and goals and so forth. But they're more into that, and I will come back to that. So while I'm standing here and talking to you, the other day I got a question from a friend, but I think she's more an acquaintance, and she is a journalist, and so she's very good in asking all these abrupt questions that you're not really aware of. And we haven't met for very many years, and we were sitting down, and then I told her what I was working with, and she kind of just looked at me and she said, "And how do you know this?" And I was like, I'm pretty old now, and I'm working with this, and people paying me for doing it, but still the first reaction is that it's kind of a questioning of who are you to talk about these things, right? But that also made me think, how do I know this? How do I have the right to take the space and say, well, hey, do this and don't do that, and that's a fact, and that is not a truth. But when I'm looking back, I think that I have always been interested in studying, and I know that my main interest is human behavior. So my background comes from the behavioral science. My bachelor is in psychology. And after I finished, I graduated, I worked as a musician for a couple of years. And then I got a position as a manager within Lunds kommun. And that was, in Swedish, it is fritid- och kulturchef. In English, it will be more like culture and leisure time manager. It doesn't say anything in English, but in Swedish, it's more like it's a position. So I was pretty young, and I was responsible for 15 people, and I was a member in the management team, and I did some changes there. So I had to work really hard with change management. I had to work with all the conflicts and all the people. It was Lunds kommun. It was people who had worked there in as many years than I was during that time. And eventually I was asked to come to other groups, to other management teams, and tell them about how it was to be the only woman in the management team, how I managed to do this big change, how I got all the people together, and I'm curious, and I thought, well, why not? And then I discovered that I was doing that full time, so I started my own business and became a management consultant, working with the same thing, with management, leadership, how to get a group together. So I was working practically before, but I also always the studies, because I don't want to tell you lies. I don't want to tell you things that is not true. And in the behavior science, social science, there are lots of truth. You know, in the science, if you are lucky, you will have one truth, and that's fine. You will have the numbers, and you can say, okay, so this is the truth. Within the social and behavior science, we have a lot of truths there. So it's important to actually discover the truth that is sustainable, and that actually has some both experience, but also some research behind. And that is my track. After been working for as a consultant for some years, I have had a customer, SWEP International, who was working in the heavy end industry, producing heat exchangers. I don't know if you heard about them. They are a competitor to Alfa Laval. Then I was asked to be the HR director, and I was that for 12 years, member in the management team, and working with the same thing, developing this HR department, but also working with the strategy, with the business, as being a part in the management team. And 5 years ago, after 12 years at SWEP, I started as a consultant again, because this is probably my pattern. I want to go in and work really hard with the issues, but then I really like to be of use to other people and tell about what I know, as I told my friend when she was asking. So I've been running this now for 5 years, and I'm working on 3 levels. I'm working with organizational, group, and individual development. And there I do all different stuff, still tracking, I hope, on a solid track. Okay, so, yep.
I'd like to add that SWEP developed from a startup to an international company, a very successful one, and you were actually managing these issues along the way. And now you're working with, I don't know if you can tell, but I know that you work with some tech companies that are doing exactly the same journey right now.
Thank you for reminding me, because that is not, so when I started SWEP, I think we were like 300, and today we are 1,000. I still say, but I still have some job for them. And since I had that experience with how do you do that, how do you actually work with growth, and since my task was both, I mean, being a member in the management team, you need to look at the business, and you need to look at the products, and we were developing factories in different countries and so forth. But what do you do with all the joint ventures, and what do you do when you start a plant in a different company, and how do you get all these different nationalities working together, moving in the same direction? So that experience actually gave me the opportunity to work, as Marianne said, with different companies. So I can mention that there is a company here in Malmö who works with clocks and called Anima Kronabil. I don't know, maybe some has been working for Sony and probably know some of the guys there. When I started to work with them, it is 3 years ago. It's actually just a couple of months after they started. They were 4 starting the company, and they had like consultants. So they were, let's say, like 20, and they are more to 70, 80 today. And they are also during my time with them, they have been growing internationally too. And then I have some other, I think I mentioned this company because that's okay to do, but I have some other customers. That's everything from small company being like 4, being like 15. They have grown from 2 to 15 today that I'm helping, and my focus is what we're gonna discuss today. I can be, since I work on an organizational level, I can be a consultant when it comes to the pure business, but I think it's important that you keep on what you do the best, and I think that this is my file. So now I am on track, right? Okay. I will first show you a model or a picture, maybe it is more like a philosophy that is very important with everything that we are talking about. And it's actually in life, and it's been work, it has been, we have this model at my side for a very long time. And I think that when we in everything we do, even if we start a company or we have a relationship or whatever it might be, we of course have a goal, a purpose with it. And when we talk about companies, they're probably a goal. This is what we want to achieve. This is what we want, where we want to go, right? What we do when we have this idea, so this is the goal, this is what we want to do. What we do is that we start to focus on, okay, to get to the goal, what do we need to do? What are we aiming to do? What do we need to do? And then eventually, since we are human beings and we are aware of the relationship processes and we are aware of, I mean, we've been around and we know in everything it's about how we do it, right? Because we are not robots, so we will eventually come to that. How do we do that? But most of the time we're stuck here, so we know that we are heading for a goal, and we're discovering what to do and how we will do it, and then we just move on. The huge difference is, and that I can see is, and maybe you have already done it, because it kind of come naturally, and it is to ask the question, why? And the huge difference is that I can tell when I'm working together with company, did you start with, or do you know your why? Do you know why you exist? Do you know why you want to do that? And when you ask that question, why, it can go for relationships too. Why do I want to be with this man? You know, instead of, okay, so how will I manage this? You recognize this picture because, and when I first discovered it, it is the iceberg for one thing. I mean, you know the iceberg, you know, you see the surface, but here is all the profound and all the important stuff, but it's not over the surface. So we taught that, you know, we learned that. We know that the iceberg is existing. You probably maybe you went to this training in Yale in Sweden, Utbildning gruppledare. They talk about the walnut. So they talk about the what and the how. So we know this, and you probably seen Simon Sinek on TED Talk, did you? Raise your hand. And so it's not that very many. So I have to write his name. He's lovely to listen to, right? Good looking, smart man who knows what he's talking about. He's doing this same picture but with more like a dart. So he starts with the why in the middle, and then he goes to the how and then what. So it really doesn't matter, but the thinking and how it gets to you, the thinking, and when you start to work with it is so important. And Simon Sinek, he says, I mean, for us who has been listening to him, he said very, very time, he's American, so he knows how to pronounce it. And he says, people, they never buy what you do, they buy why you're doing it. And he is bringing up Apple for an example. That Apple, I mean, we can analyze and discuss Steve Jobs and so forth, but this is not the seminar for that, but it's interesting, or not, but what he gives Apple as a profound example of why there is sustainability in their business, because it started with more like a philosophy, why do we want to do this? And still, when they are selling the products, they're selling their why. You see the point? Not that we want to be an average computer for everyone, good to use, but this is more like gonna enter people's lives. And I'm not saying that just because I have an Apple, but I'm not so. But this picture is, so we will have this picture like a mantra or like a picture behind us when we're talking about all these different things, because there are so many things coming back to this. For you who have been participating leadership training or management training, you were taught that there is a difference between being a manager and being a leader, right? Maybe you recognize that. So here is the management. Here is what you do when you are being a manager, and here is what you do when you are being a leader, for one example. But when you talk about culture, when you talk about having the people moving, all the people, even if you're growing, if you are, internationalizing your company, whatever you do, you will lose people if they don't know your company's why, and also if they can hook their why to your companies. So you need to work with this even when you start to recruit people. You need to go digging down into the purpose, the reason why people want to work with you. And don't buy the reason or the explanation that goes on the surface, right? You really, if you want a sustainable, if you want someone to stay with you, you really need to dig down and have a good interview to discover the why. Because you will change as a company, and maybe you will change the why because of the scaling or whatever you will do, but you need to talk about it. You need to do a recheck with your employees. So what about the why? Okay? Have you, we will take, I'll give you 30 seconds and you will just digest this picture. So you can talk to each other just for some seconds. Okay, did we buy this? Was it clear or was it? Yeah, Lotta, this is a good idea. So you need to move more, like, so you can discuss. Just a couple of seconds. No other purpose than just, okay, so do we buy this? Please go ahead. Okay, that was, I think, 30 seconds. Is it clear? No, this is not a Nobel Prize winner model. I think you, or did you have any questions or anything about it? No? It's pretty clear. Yeah. Right. And also I wrote this because this is actually also what we're striving for. We're striving for that we know the goal. We know whatever we're going. We want to go in that direction. And we want the whole company to go in the same direction. We want all the departments, whatever it's going to be, to go in the same direction. And we want all the people to go in the same direction. So we need to have this moving on the whole time. Okay. Before, I'd like to make also a touchdown. So because I believe in identifying problem and learning out from that. So I'm curious about questions you have and what you expected from this seminar. So we're gonna just shortly go through that. But before that, my purpose, my expectation of from myself today is that I really like to, and maybe I should, I could use the word convince you about how important this stuff is that we're gonna discuss. So if I'm not clear, and if I'm not concrete enough, I really beg you to ask me for examples, or because it's a jungle, but I like to give you some concrete stuff that you can actually start to use when you leave this at lunchtime. But can you take, and you can talk to you or to the one that you talked before, but when it comes to expectation, what do you want to learn today? It doesn't have to be very well pronounced or anything, but what do you want to take away from this seminar when we leave? Just take some seconds and discuss that and think, and we will. Yeah? Do you have some thoughts? What did you look more worried? My goodness, how she's gonna cook this?
No, some models or tools to.
Regarding and let's, I mean, we're talking about growth team, right? But we need to talk about it connected to the organizational value culture stuff. So I guess, or am I?
Yeah, you're right.
Thank you. Okay. Did you say anything more there?
No.
International is an interesting aspect.
Mm?
How do you support this for international growth?
Mm? There's a difference between international and global. but you mean international
Or global.
or global? Okay. Growth in the whole wide world. Yeah. And then in what way? We don't know. Yeah? Did you get any thought?
Well, I'm considering, I've heard several people talking about startups saying that the main reason why startups fail is that teams does not cooperate any longer. There are conflicts. So how to avoid when you're growing, how to achieve a team that does not, that really works well, cooperates well.
Like that. We know
Something like that.
what we mean. Yeah. Thank you. Hmm? Did you have anything?
Well, I was just thinking now, besides track from this, how do you apply this on big structures, old structures, like healthcare business? Look at the hospitals there in Sweden. How do you get them to think this way? Because I think they fail in how to engage their employees. But that's maybe that's a sidetrack.
No, but I've been working with. I've been working with this and have together with Regions Skåne, for example, like a couple of times. Maybe I have some inputs from that, and if I don't, remind me and ask me.
Maybe more private. I think that's
maybe more private. Yeah. Well, that is exciting. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I was on the same track there, how to create the perfect team, and also a little bit about care about groups in the, what do you call it, society.
Yeah. I'm just right. Did you say anything there?
I'm a perfect team, and how to create it with the right people, helping each other. Perfect dynamic team.
Yeah.
And how do you see that? How do you
know?
measure that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Good. Okay, so we'll go for measure that. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, what to think about when recruiting the team members? And what to avoid?
You got a little aha when I said digging in and asking the right questions and so forth. Yeah, we say recruiting. We know what we mean there. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, do we have any? No? Okay, so let's start. I'm going to show you some numbers that comes from truth, and it's a sign of where you do not want to go. Here is what you do not want with your companies. But if you look, like some times ago, or this is an average, these numbers is from like 1-2 years ago. 60-70% of all change management projects in companies are failing. It could be whatever, but it's a change management. Oh, I have an idea, let's go in this direction, or you really put an effort and you have a decision from the management team, whatever. You will have like 60-70% that is failing. 43, they interviewed 14,400 managers. 43% sees themselves being good at managing and driving projects. That's nice, I think. 50% of the resistance to changes is not the change as such, but to the process. So we know one fact about us human beings is that when it comes to changes, we all have a little, a little reaction like that. Oh, a change? Oh. And then some of us have, and we can talk about personality or what we have in our luggage, you know, what we have experienced. We will go like, oh, no, not a change. Oh, no, why? You know, and some of us will be like, oh, a change, that's great. We have the whole scale. But you will have like what we are not, so we all have a hesitance for change, but when we just come over that bump, and that is up to the manager, to the leader, to actually push us or communicate to us. And then when we go for it. And then when the change is moving on and we are looking at it or we are talking about the change, it's not actually the change as such. It's about the how. How is the change managed? Some years ago, you had 16% of the Swedish employees that are engaged at work, and we see that number. That number still exists. 73%, they were sitting off their time. So they were waiting for lunch or waiting for fika, 73%. And you will have like 11, 10 more today that are really, they are disconnected. So they go there and they're not waiting for anything. They just go there and they just take your money. Not motivated at all. So today you can say an average between 10-30%, they are engaged at work. And when it comes to meetings is 30% of the time within an organization. And when you are a manager, it will occupy your time with 50 to 80%. And when you come to the meetings, and I don't know if you have experienced that, but you come to a meeting and you really do not know, maybe you have a clue of what the meeting is about, but the main thing is you don't know what you are doing there. So you go to a meeting and maybe what you were supposed to do there just took 10 minutes. And then actually you will sit like the rest of the 2 hours sitting, listening and try to figure out what you're doing there. A whole lot of waste of time and, of course, money. So we don't want to go there. So how do you avoid that? Well, you need to think and you need to work with it and you need to think about it from 3 different levels, the levels that I talked about before. So we're going to look into those levels and see what it's all about. So it's about how do we get people motivated, how will we get them engaged, because if they are and they know their why, then you will have people being themselves, taking the personal leadership and know what's in for them and know why they are doing stuff, and they will move together with you. And then you can actually grow. You can grow, and you can grow into the whole wide world and to all these different countries. But you will have motivated people. But you need to work with it. So from an organizational level, it is, and I told you before, that when it comes to the human beings, there is a lot of truth. There's not only one truth. So it will be a lot of irrationality. So you will find one person, you will employ one person, and you know what that person is, and you will find yes. And you will employ 2 persons, and you will, oh, this is doing pretty good. And then you will think that they will probably work nice together, but then something will happen, because that is what we do. And what we have, we human beings, we have a lot of biases, the human factors, and that is very irrational. So you will go like, my goodness, what happened here? I went to all these trainings and all these seminars, and I thought I knew what's right, but it's irrational. So you need to accept it, and you need to work with the human beings, the human natures out from, this is never going to be rational. This is irrational. And so you need to have a connection. You need to know what is happening in the surrounding world, in all around, all around you. You need to know the rational side, and you need to know your rational side. Your rational side is the what, is the structure, is what can we measure, is the strategies. So the strategies and the working methods needs to be connected with the relationship processes, and it needs to be connected to what is happening around the world. It's about values and culture. And here, when it comes to values and culture, I don't know why we don't work with it as much as we should do. And here is where I said before that some companies really are failing because they take something for granted. I started this. I do it because I know the purpose. I have a value. I know the culture that I want to. And then we're growing. And then we kind of take it for granted because we don't have the time. And then, okay, we realize we really need to do something about this. And then we say, oh my goodness, how do we do this? Because it's hard, it's tough. How do we get all the people together? So it really, really doesn't matter if you're one person in a company, or if you are two, or if you are 200. You need to start to talk and to think about and put an effort in discussing what is the values and what is the culture. And the culture is not so very, very hard. It's actually about how do we do things here? How do we do things? The how again. How do we do things? Why do we exist and how do we do things? How do we communicate to each other? What do we want? Do we want curiosity in this company? Do we want loyalty? Do we want honesty? What is openness? What is no, we don't want? You know, you have lots of words. What company most of the time do is that, okay, Lotta, I hear what you say. We're going to work with the culture. We will discover 3 buzzwords, 3 core values that is important. And then you will have like honesty, loyalty, curiosity, or something like that. Words that, nice words, but it doesn't mean anything. But here, and then you put it on the wall, you know. And it doesn't mean, so it needs to be connected to the people and to the profound reason, what is culture? And then you will have the quote from Mr. Drucker, that is an old guru, and he said, and this is like very, very many years ago, he said this, a culture eats strategy for breakfast. And why he said that is that you can have very nice strategies, and you can have a business plan, and you can know where you're going, but you're dealing with people. You're dealing with human beings, and how they are doing it, and what they actually are doing with when they are communicating and when they go to the daily life, it would just totally eat the strategy. So you will be standing there screaming, my goodness, here is the strategy, we have a business model, and people will do whatever they feel like, because that is how we do with the free will. So we need to develop a social contract. In other words, we need to, it's also called the norms, and the norms are the unwritten rules about how do we do things here. I have a picture, it's very small, but I put it, it's not very clear, I see it now. But here is actually what we are talking about. So you, and I don't know if you have done that, you develop the vision, mission, and strategy, and then you have all around you, you will have your employees, suppliers, owners, and customers, and you will have the world economy, and whatever it might be. And then to execute whatever you are supposed to do, there needs to be a balance between the culture, that is the values, the behaviors, the symbols, and the structure, the organization, the process, and the systems. And most of the company, they actually are more loaded, or the structure is actually what they are focusing on. The difference between, or the good thing about, now we don't know it's probably going to go well, but when it came to Anima, that was from the very, very beginning. Their story is that they come from Sony, and they sit in the basement, and they are discovering and thinking and get the idea of having this clock, this smart clock, and they want to digitalize the whole world with it, so they have lots of ideas, but it actually starts in the basement. And it took them just a couple of months since they called me. And they called me, and the first question was, how do we do this? What do we need? Because we want the balance here. And they were, and I think that is actually one of the key of that success story, is that to have that in mind from the very beginning. We are only this. We work very well together, but what about the culture? And they are rewording. This is what they work with the whole time, but since they're growing very fast, they need to remind themselves, why did we start this? Why are we doing this? And also, what do we want from the people? So they are working very profoundly with this in the recruiting and in the methods while people are working, and then they are measuring it. So it's not like they're doing it and we want to have a good time. They want to have a good time too, but they really also put an effort in how do we see that we are doing it in the right way. Let's see what my next picture is. So, culture is, oh, I'm sorry for my arrow, it looked very well when I was looking at it, when I was doing it. So, the culture, and here is where I really am striving for to convince you, the sooner you start to work with and identify your culture, the better. Then you can always redo or refine or sharpen it up. But this is very important because here is how are we doing things. And the culture is about how people are interacting with each other. So here we come to the major importance for how we work with groups and individuals. So you will have the values and the beliefs, and that will actually drive the attitudes within your company. And that is actually something that you can measure. And the attitudes that people have, that attitudes, that drives behavior. And the behavior, it is actually determines how we interact with others. Okay? Am I convincing you? You knew this from before. You probably, since you are startup companies and you have been around before, you have been in touch with the S-curve, right? Please tell me yes or no. Nothing is wrong or right. Okay, so I give you a short, we're not going to talk about the S-curve here, but what you can see is that when you start a company, here you start the company, and then you will develop, and then it will go pretty good, and then something will happen. You know, when you have the mature, you will go like, oh, you will have, like it says, very many different paths of how to do, what tracks should we choose here. And if you're not doing anything here, or here, I would say, then you have a big chance to, it says dying, but that is actually what happens to companies. So you will just fail. So you need to find a future curve. Actually, the S-curve is, if you go like this, and then if you start, you go like this. So when you're doing fine, you kind of, you look at the surrounding, you see the trends. Did you see what I was pointing, or was it unclear? So while you're doing fine, you will have like, okay, so we need maybe, what's next? So you start with that, like here. And then you will have an S going, and then you start here, and then you will have like this going on. So give me example of, for example, some companies who was here and who died, that we don't know anything about. You have some classical example.
Kodak.
Exactly, Kodak. Right? We all know Kodak. So that is an example. We also have Faucet. That is also, they were doing fine. And they knew about that something electronic was arriving because they could see that. Actually, I just learned that the main reaction was that do we have the strength? Do we dare to, can we do this? No, we're doing so fine. So we're kind of closing our ears and then we just continue. You have, in Sweden, we have Hemmakväll. You know Hemmakväll, okay? For those who are not used to Hemmakväll is when I was little, that was like very many years ago, and still being grown up, you could go to this store and you could rent the VHS, you know, and also the machine. So you have the movie, you have the VHS and the machine, right? It was doing very well for them. And then the development came into the DVD, right? And we all had the machines. So they swapped. They had like, oh, we're doing fine with the VHS here. They'll do, okay, so something is happening. So they start something new here, the DVD. Yeah, that's good. Now something is happening. We don't rent the DVD as much anymore because we stream the movies now, right? So what has Hemmakväll, what has they been doing? What do you do at Hemmakväll if you go there?
Buy candy.
You buy candy! And you have, exactly. So here when they see that, okay, so, ooh, the DVD, they're starting to stream, they found, okay, but people still need candies. So they kind of, and that is actually what they still have some movies and you can buy some movies, right? But they have the candies. And they have the soft club, it's the couch club, where you can join. Not the movie oriented, but the candies and the chips and whatever. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that the high performing companies, they go like this. They have a curve that go like that. So whenever you have that, you go like that, you go like that. And the people need to move in the same direction. So the S curve is very much important to know, because when you are starting to, okay, so what's now? Here is also where you start to look upon, so what about the people? How many people do I need? What kind of competence? You need to make a workforce planning whatsoever for the company. So we will soon leave this culture thing, but this is a model that I'm working with, and with the companies that I'm working with. It's a very, very nice model, and what you do is that you will have the company or the management team working with identifying and in a very, it takes days, actually, it can take one day. So what you do is that you do a current situation. So you will have the people discussing and also put on paper what is our current situation when it comes to the stories, the symbols, the rituals and the routines, the power structures, the organizational structure, and the control. So and this is what I do for myself too. So what are my stories? Well, I have some stories that I have. Anima, you just heard one story, and I have some more stories that I know and that I use and that I talk. And are they the right stories that I want to talk about in my companies? I have symbols. I have my logo there, and I also use the color of orange very much in the most thing. That is also something that I want you to associate with my company, the orange color, the color of orange and so forth. I have rituals, I have routines. I have my home office, and I have created routines and rituals, especially when my husband and my kid comes home. I need to have a structure there. I need to be aware of it, so I have that. Power structure is very easy because it's only me, so I am in power. And the organizational structure is also very easy. And how do I control? How do I run my finance, and how do I measure my performance and so forth? See, I'm the only one, and I still need to do this. So when I have made this from the current situation, and I have a picture of it, then I need to think about, where do I want to go? What kind of, if I work with this model with companies that have been going on for like years, you can have SWEP, you can have like Anima, you can have whatever, they've been 30 years, 20 years. You have a current situation, but you also have a picture, where do you want to go? Maybe you have some stories. I was working with one company, and when they were discovering the stories, they have a lot of military stories. So they have a wording like they're gonna kill them, and it's the battle, and I don't know, I can't phrase the military words in English, and I don't remember that in Swedish either, but it was like, oh my goodness. And then when they were discussing what kind of stories do we want to leave the military stories, because that was connected to the old CEO. So we want to leave it. We want new stories. What kind of stories? Well, we are very much, and then it came like more into soccer or athletics, stuff like that. So, and then they do that with everything. And they also, were they the one who changed the logo? I don't know. But the symbols and the colors, and where did they put all the information and everything. And then they made an action plan. How do we reach the new culture? So what I would like you, just so you try this model, we don't have the time to do it like very much, but if you can take a little time for yourself and discuss, I give you 10 minutes to do this. You can go and you can have some coffee, but I really would like you to start to get closer to this model, because this is what the culture is all about, and this is what you're supposed to spread within your company, all these different areas. It's a good idea. You think about it, right? We don't want you to move forward then and express what you just discovered. This is for your own sake. But let's take 10 minutes, go and get some coffee, discuss, and take all these different areas. How was it? Was it possible to describe your company out from this model? Or did you do it for yourself, or? Yeah? Any questions or anything?
Oh, it's interesting because especially if you're a small startup and you're probably a pretty decisive leader, the manager of that, or very emotionally engaged in that startup, right? And so everything you say and do as far as stories, for example, is supposed to have a dramatic impact on what happens. And I've seen companies go south because of the stories.
Even that?
Yeah. Establishing the longer term, establishing the wrong culture for the wrong reason.
Right. And it happens like that. So people start to.
Eventually, it happens like that.
Yeah.
Like you know.
If you're not aware of it, so you really should know or have an awareness of what kind of stories do you want to have around you. And then of course we do all these different mistakes and all this different stuff is happening. But it's more like, because that is the human factor. But I think have a long-sighted mind, actually too. And also that never regret what you have done, but you can redo it.
Right.
Never regret, but redo it.
The story can become so dominant,
Yes.
you know, because the leader is so engaged in it that people don't care
Yes.
because they know they're going to have to align with that story.
Yes.
You know, right? So
And also a story
Just an
can be,
example.
it could be that, okay, so it's okay to do that, then I will do that too. So it's directly connected to the behavior. It's interesting. Anything else about this model? It's interesting. I like the model because they have identified what we mean with culture. They make it very concrete. And it make it very tangible for us to actually work with it and to have it in our mind. And then how it developed and how it's going to be, that is of course different. But I think that is nice. I was thinking, when we were thinking about that, when we are growing and when we are working with this kind of thing, and I was thinking that going back to when I just briefly said recruiting, I'd like to give you a picture about the HR world. That is actually, because most of the time it is the HR that is responsible for the culture and for the values and for the recruiting and for the human beings and so forth. And maybe that is a good idea to have an HR department, because the HR should always have the employees' perspective and be the support to the manager. So you should be, the HR should be the isolated island, always having the employees and the co-workers' perspective. So I'm working with a company, and there was a huge problem with the atmosphere at the office. So my task was, when I was doing a measurement and assessment, how about the working climate, and then made a plan and trying to develop this. After a while, because I couldn't fit, it was huge problems. The people, they were 35 sitting in the office and the other one in the production. The people in the office, it was different groups, of course. They had these artificial harmonies. They were very nice to each other, but they were kind of knife stabbing them in the back. They were lending money from each other, so they kind of was mixed up with the private and the professional. You know, it was a disaster, and I couldn't figure out. They have been working. This was a pretty old company. Then after a while, I discovered that the CEO, in his position description, it said HR. HR manager. And they had been moving on, and that was natural because they thought that it's a pretty flat organization. We have a small management team. It's just for the head departments and so forth. So it's no problem. I can fix this too. So that was actually, and he inherited that. So that was the custom. And for me, it was like this is actually the root cause for everything, because you don't have anyone just having the employee's perspective. And I would have the CEO telling me, well, I'm a very open manager. I can talk to anyone and they can come to me and my door is open. Well, you can't. You can't, because you're still a CEO, right? So that is a pretty good thing. In the beginning, it's kind of natural to have it. I mean, you are everything if you're all alone or then if you develop. But after a while, please have a thought in your mind the whole time. When is it time to just have someone who could have an objective perspective and be there for the employees? Well, nevertheless, you probably are responsible for the HR department now. So the HR processes is, and this is very simple, it's actually this way. So what you do is that you will have different employees or the world is here, and you are wondering, okay, who's going to be in this company or not? So what you start with in the first box, you have recruit and you have selection, right? So you actually choose who's going to be here. And in this box, you need to have strategies, processes. You need to have quality secured. Recruiting is so crucial. It's so important. You really don't take your neighbors. And this is, if you can do this from the very start, it's huge impact that you really put an effort. Have a consultant helping you and really make sure that you have a quality secured and a sustainable process here. Then the people go into the company and you will have like the working methods here. And the working methods is what we are talking about. How are we doing things here? Who's going to be where? Are people doing, developing, whatever that might be. So you will have a huge amount of different processes and strategies here. It's performance management, change management, it's whatever. And then it's not stopping here, because then you have to make an assessment here. So you need or measurement. You need to figure out how are we doing this. And then you need to be very, very clear, because when you are assessing what's happening here, you will find some people that we need to goodbye, then need to go out, actually. And you will have some people that will go, okay, you're doing pretty good, so you will probably have maybe more money or maybe some training, and then it goes back here, and then it starts all over again. So this is not rocket science or anything, but this is what you can start to work with already. Make sure the recruiting. How are people doing stuff at your company? And please, please measure it. So, okay, measuring Lotta. We understand what that is. That is probably an employee survey, right? We have a little app, and then everyone is filling that in, and then so the most important thing, if you're doing that, the employee survey, or just checking with the talk or whatever that might be, is not the talk and the measurement as such, but it's actually what you do with it. You need to do with it. You need to follow up. You need to, the stuff that you are, getting from the assessment, that is important. But we do it, and it's most about the hardcore, right? So what is easy to measure is the performance. How are you doing? Are you having any fun? Well, you sold for this amount last year. That was very good, and so forth. What is harder, and what people think is harder, is to measure all the stuff that we're talking about and that we're gonna talk about later on today. And that is human, that is the attitudes, that is the values, that is how are we doing that. And I'm gonna give to you a very simple and a very, very nice model that I actually developed at SWEP, because we had the problem, and SWEP was the company, the big company. we had a problem with how we were measuring how people were doing and the selling and the performance, so to speak. So that was easy. You know, they have the managers, they would have like salary talks and well, you know how you measure performance. But what we did was to really get who do we want to stay here, we really need to measure the other stuff, the soft stuff, the stuff that is, you know, hard to touch on. So I added one line here. So if we call that performance, I call this attitude. Now you go like, this is hard to measure. How do you measure an attitude? Well, since we know about that culture is important, and we know that values are important, out from that, it is important to identify core values. What kind of core values when it comes to attitude do we want here? So I took the management team, and I had them for like several hours to develop and describe crucial core values, crucial core attitude traits that actually they want to see with their employees. So they were coming up to, well, they said that cooperation, I don't remember exactly, this is like many, but like cooperate with others. And then you identify that, what does that mean? Well, you can see if someone is a lonely wolf, and that is not, he's not supposed to be the lonely wolf. He's like, okay, I take this and then run away. No, we at our place, we don't want him to do that. We want him first, you know, it's important with meeting and cooperation. We actually put an impact on that. So that is important. What do we else want? We want loyalty. How do you show that? Well, you can measure it with how people are acting, communicating, how do they talk about the company, the manager outside. I mean, now today we have social media, and I had one employee, she was so stupid. When she came home, she started to put on her Facebook or LinkedIn how stupid her manager was. You know, it was like, so the whole company was kind of reacting to that. So that wasn't very loyal. That was a clear cut, that was easy. I mean, I'm not saying that everything is easy. So what else? We actually put also that in not only curiosity, God, I can't spell, whatever, curiosity. We want them to be questioning. You know, like in a curious way, question us. You know, if now we're going to change this. Ask us why. Question. Come with suggestions about that. We could do this differently, and you can do it. I haven't tried this. So we actually put it on. Well, you get the picture, right? So that was attitude, and that is different. That could be different. That is up to you to decide. So what I then did was that I just made a PowerPoint slide, and this is the slide they got. They got on the other 2 slides actually. So this was only the performance and attitude, like this, on one slide, and on the other side, we had identified the performance, what that was, and also these keywords, an explanation about what we meant with it. And then we gave it to all the managers, and we said, okay, so pinpoint your persons here. You know, put like Carl here. He has great performance, but his attitude is really sucking, right? And then we have Eve, and she is not so very good in performance, but my goodness, she comes early, she cooks the coffee, she makes everyone comfortable, and so forth. She's actually not performing so well. And then you will have like people like this. So who do we want in our company? Well, we want the high performers, right? We want them. Here, we want them, right? And that is a high performer in the wording of high, doing great in attitude, loyal to the company, but also and hooked to the culture and to the teams and everything we're going to talk about, and also doing great, right? Those, like poor Carl here, he is more like, you know, like a diva, a star. And he was actually, his name wasn't, of course, Carl. There was another name, and we had plenty of them. They used to be the key account managers And for a while, when we actually was in a phase when the key account managers were really, really great, I put all the effort to create a different file for them. So that was okay, you can have this attitude, but I'm gonna get to you later. But right now, you're doing very great, and we are actually growing, so go ahead, but I'm keeping my eye on you. So we need to work with them. Those, no, we don't want them, right? So we need to have an exit plan for them. But they are identified. And then those, well, maybe Eve, what do you need to actually get a greater performance? What kind of plan do we get for you? So the manager did this, just pointing all the people. And then we had a meeting. It was me, and it was the CEO and the manager. And we pinpointed. At that time, we were like 700-800 people. I mean, it's easier to do it in smaller. We actually went through it all. From the manager's R&D department down to the production. It took us a week, but we did it. And the CEO sat there and he said, okay, so dear manager, a plan for those. And then to the HR department to actually have them, and to actually do something about it. What do we do with them? And it was in those meetings we said, okay, for a while, but Lotta will keep an eye on them, so that's fine. And then eventually, okay, Carl, and he didn't stay after I took the file away from him. His special file, so he left. He was great, but his name is not Carl, and I said that. But actually what you need is to do is, this is how you combine the values, the attitude to the performance. But you really need to maybe redefine those words. They need to be up to date, right? And you need to walk the talk. So it is combined with all this, the stories, this stuff that we want to do. But you need to identify those, and you need also to do an action plan with it. And this you can do even if you can do it with yourself. And hopefully you're not there. Hopefully you're being in the high performing. But also doing with your own, even if you only two. And what we did was that we noticed after some years that the focus were very much here, because that is what we do, right? But we want to keep them. We want them to maintain high performance, and how do you do that? So you need a special process, a strategy to actually keep them. Program we choose to do this. So I give you 30 seconds to digest what I just talked about. Is this doable? Does it make any sense for you? That was 30 seconds. I have so much I want to tell you, so I'm sorry for rushing this out for you. So I hope you had some good discussions here. Is it doable for you? You thinking? And of course, this is why this started, is that it's also connected to the salary, right? So sometimes you would be in a situation where you have a great performer who is really expecting a high salary raise, where you will feel like, oh, but still, with something about this soft stuff, I can't put my finger on, but the attitude maybe, or whatever. So it's very hard to sit in the situation where you're discussing a salary raise with someone who said, well, see my numbers, I'm doing this great, as a manager. So you really, here is where you will go like, fine, good numbers, but still here at our company, this is what we put an effort to. This is also important. So that is why, some way, I think I started to work with that, because it was like I was seeing that people were getting very high raises, and I was going like, my goodness, what is that person actually doing? Also connected globally, this is very doable, because, and I mean, I can compare it with Sweat, because that is kind of a solid example. We had factories and sales offices all over the world, and there was China, and there was Malaysia, Slovakia, Switzerland, and US, and Sweden. So we have the whole world. And what I learned, I think, what actually I have a great experience of, is that in a global company, the companies, like in this SWEPS, the company's values and culture is primary. And the national, I mean, if you go to Malaysia or China, whatever, their culture, that is secondary. Because my experience is that it is actually a huger difference between us individuals than it is when it comes to cultures. You can think about that for a while. So when we were doing this, and those were, that was SWEP's words, and that was the same in China, in Malaysia, in whatever. You need to have that, but the management team was an international global management team, so you will have all this input in the discussions, but that is important to know. So then I'm not saying that when it comes to when you go to China and you will run business there and so forth, that will be struggling. You will see huge differences, and we were discussing Danish and Swedish people and Japanese and so forth. So that is when you actually are running the business. But when you are creating your business, you actually don't have to change the culture and the attitude and the core values for the other ones. I had one example when I was trying to run, what was that? That was, appraisal meetings, developing meetings, people talking about what they felt and did and, stuff like that. And I had the HR in Malaysia and said that this we can't do, it's illegal, because it's not a good way. This is not how you do it. You don't ask people how they are feeling, what they do. And I'm a very deep person, this is my focus the whole time, is how are you doing, how do you feel? And I said, and then I did my homework, so I knew this is not illegal. There's nothing illegal. Maybe it's uncomfortable for some people in Malaysia to have these kind of questions and to have this kind of meetings, but there are so many other people in Malaysia who is not uncomfortable with these kind of questions. And we want the people still, because this is our culture. We actually put an impact on the soft values, how people are doing. We need to ask those questions. So I've been in the recruiting process especially in Asia, where you will have people like not being able to talk about feelings or developing or anything, but so many who actually are. And those, they started at SWEP, and those are working at SWEP. But you need to, in the recruiting interview, dare to ask these questions, and also have that you are there for your company's sake. We are very many people in the world, so you will find some. But don't ever lack and try to modify your values and your culture, because then you will have great mistakes, because then you'd want to talk. So that was what I wanted to say. Okay, so we don't have that much time. I'm very curious about this model. I'm also curious about your stories about the companies, but I have to say, to be continued with that part. So we have been dealing and wheeling a little bit while with the major part, I would say, to actually, when we work with groups and individuals, what do we want from them? What do we actually want? And it's connected to the culture and to the values. And in the very beginning, I said to work with, you remember the numbers, and we didn't want to go there, right? And I said, how do we avoid that? Well, we work on 3 different levels. We work on organizational levels, and here we have been touching the culture and the values. And the second level is the group level. And we will come back to this, because that is actually one of the themes for these hours that we're spending together. But just to say something briefly about it, that here, when it comes to creating high-performing teams and creating groups, is really the irrational part shooting sharp here. Because here you will take one decision, and you will go, as I said before, to one training, you will learn one method, and then you meet the group, and then the group is, it's like very, vivid, it's going in its own direction, and you have lots of people and feelings and thinking, and woo, how do you move everyone there? So it's really the irrational side going sharp here. You really need also to believe that groups are more efficient than one person. There are so many science now and so many researchers about this and so many proofs that this is actually what is happening. That the group is discovering and is developing more ideas, more creative ideas than one single person's, if you are doing it in the right way. Like brainstorming, for example. You can have a brainstorming, and if you do it in the wrong way, you will not reach the great ideas. If you're doing it in the right way, you know, you will have really these two thoughts that are connecting, and you will create. So a brainstorming in the wrong way is that when you put all the group together and you have a whiteboard and you say, see, it's a whiteboard, now everyone come, take a pencil, and we just, nothing is right, nothing is wrong, just say what you want, and then you have a brainstorm, right? We've all been there. That is not a good way of having a brainstorm. If you really want to get what people individually, because you want to reach and achieve the thing that where you go and you will have the third, the synergy, you have a brainstorm, you connect all the people, and then you give them post-it notes. And then you say, we're going to talk, we have probably a theme or something that you want them to talk about, a change, whatever. You still say nothing is wrong, nothing is right, everything is okay, but you start individually. So you will have them have a post-it note and then use as many as possible and then just write one idea for one post-it. And then without any censoring or anything, you will have the people putting the post-it notes on the whiteboard. And here, now you're talking. Now you get it. So do we have time for that? Yeah, you do. Sure, you do. You have time to start with the individual and doing it in the right way. You'll probably do it like the right way, right? In the groups, it's important that you know and that you have identified, and I said that before, the social contract. It's about the group norms. It's the unwritten rules. And then the keyword. And I hope, we have so many buzzwords in this world, and we have so many words that is popping in, and everyone is talking about, and then they are popping out. And people are starting to talk about trust. And I do hope this is not just a buzzword, because this is the key to everything. We'll come back to that. The third level, it depends on where you start here, but we start from an organizational level, is the individual level. You will have you have all this saying that you have a leech, and the leech is not as strong as the weakest link, right? Or is it the opposite? No, I said it right, I think. And so, however you will turn your back, you will always come back to the individual, your employees. So I'm working with this for like very many years now. I'm beginning to think that maybe I shouldn't focus. I do a lot of leadership training and management training. Maybe I should just start to skip that. Start to skip that and only be focusing on each individual and talk about personal leadership. Because I think that the manager, the leadership, the manager should or could just be there guiding, pointing with their hands, and not spend so many times in, willing and dealing after developing personal leadership within each and one of the people in the group. That is what I strongly believe in. But I'm getting there. I still do leadership training, so I haven't left that. And that is about engagement and motivation. So we have the three levels, right? So we're coming back to the group level. Now we start. So you will find lots of different theories. If you Google group processes and group theories and group methods, and you will have loads of researching and whatever, and you have lots of names: Lewin, Tuckman, Tubb, Fisher, Poole, McGrath, Schutz, and so on and so on. It's a jungle. It's a jungle. So what I'm striving at is, and every method is good if it's working for you, right? We mustn't forget that. So if if you have found one method, or you're discovering a new method, or you're developing a good method, and you get the results, I'm fine, do that. I'm not the one to say, so this is the best theory and method, because this is something that is developing the whole time. I can tell you though, the ones that some of the ones that I've been working with, and that is what I'm aiming to do, and maybe to give you some concrete stuff to work with. But before we go into that theories, I'd like to give you some facts, because we cannot, even whatever theory and method we choose, there are some facts that we really need to look into and believe in. I said groups are more efficient, and I stick to that. And when it comes to groups, it's going back to this. It's actually the key to success for a group is the how. Is how you work together. You have a task, just tell a group, do this. Or, like you said, like you read in the numbers, you have, okay, make a change. Yeah, we will do that. But actually, what I will be thinking about and how I will manage it is not about what the change or what it was, it is actually how we do it. Group norms override individual proclivities, tendencies. And that means that the group is stronger than you will have these all different phenomena that the group will have such an impact on the individual. So maybe you will have one individual that you feel like, okay, this is on my side. But if that individual in the group will like override that. So the norms, that is the traditional, the behavioral standards, the unwritten rules that govern how we function when we gather. So we need to identify that. We need to really look into how are we talking, how are we solving our problems, how are we solving our conflicts, and be aware of that. And how team members treated each other in the right norms could actually raise a group's collective intelligence. I get the question sometimes, just give me some short words, what should I think about when it comes to group? 2 words. Okay, so the main thing, if you're working with a group, or if you're working with meetings, or whatever that might be, think about 2 things. The first thing is that you need to establish, put an impact in what we call the psychology of safety. We need people to be and to feel safe when they are in the group. They need to be, and we will come back to that, they need to feel, from not only that they sit there on the chair, but they actually feel psychologically safe. I'm here, I can be myself, and I'm okay. And the other ones is if you are having meetings, or if you are, that could be anything, that those groups where you have a feeling that everyone actually had the opportunity to talk. I had the space to talk, that you actually could measure afterwards that everyone said something, everyone out from what they wanted to say. You will have like introvert persons, extrovert persons, so they will communicate and say things in different ways. Some people will think before they talk, and some people just talk. But if you can establish a climate, you will have like a feeling that, okay, I thought a lot during this meeting, but I actually had the opportunity to say what I wanted to. Shared belief by members of a team that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. Okay, in this group, in this team, I can be myself, and I feel this psychology safety, and we can have conflict. We can actually have disagreement and talk about it, but so I can risk, what will you think about me right now? But I dare to risk that in this group, and that is the key to the success. So interpersonal trust, mutual respect, comfortable being themselves. So what kind of group, what kind of team, what kind of company do you want? Do you want the expert team? That is 1 + 1 is 2. In other words, you will put all the best brains at the table, best brains, just competence-wise, And then, since we have the best competence here, we will actually achieve the right and the most creative result. Is that the group you want to? Well, that is your choice. Or do you want the group who is 1 + 1 is 3, where you actually have the synergy effect? You will not only have the best competence, but you are actually working with the how. You're leading the group, you're leading the company where they feel this psychologically safe. So the best team, and there have been a lot of researchers here, the best is where they compare the competence group or where they compare it with the synergy group. You will have the best team, that is members that listen to one another and show sensitivity to feelings and needs. Now we're getting soft. So it's not only about the what should we do, what should we achieve, it's actually how we're doing it. And this is a hard part because it starts with yourself. Are you ready to take a personal risk? Are you ready to show your feelings, to show your needs, to show you what we call the soft core? Well, if you are, then you can lead your team, your company, to actually have that as a value. And I can assure you that you will get a company that can actually reach the top when it comes to growth. Amen, you want to say to that, right? I should see what So we have, maybe I should take because now we enter the group perspective. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you some theories and some methods that I'm working with from different perspectives. But before that, you've been listening to the facts of the group and the impact. So just have a little touchdown, 30 seconds. Okay, that was even more than 30 seconds. You have some good talk here. Do you have any thoughts or any comments or that you want to share? You're longing for the methods.
I mean, maybe not directly group related, but I'm back to this car guy. If you think smaller scale, like, we're a 4-man team, you may have to manage that car guy quite a while, because if he is performing, you want to have him on board, and you have to give him a long leash.
Yeah.
But how do you make sure that doesn't affect the rest of the group?
Yeah. So how have you experienced with that?
Yeah.
Have you been? So what did you do?
No, it failed.
It failed.
Yeah.
Oh my
Because you have
goodness.
to,
I'm sorry.
Well, you have to let this guy go, right?
Yeah.
As long as he's driving revenue, you have to keep him on board, independent of attitude or whatever, in that phase of the company. And because it's such an important component, and pretty soon you realize that it takes 6 months to get anyone up to speed, and you don't have time for that. So you've got to keep this guy on board, but eventually, when you try to pull him in, it won't work, so you have to get rid of him.
No.
And at that point, you better have a replacement. But in a smaller company, you're more dependent on these individuals, and it's harder to. It becomes a little bit, practically it's a little bit tough.
I see your point. And also one thing that is an obstacle is and that is hard is that you don't have the opportunity or money or time to actually, okay, so I let him go for a little while. Meanwhile, I'm looking for a replacer. So that is maybe easier at a bigger company, with all the respect to that. I think that is a major thing. But still, I think, you have something.
No, I think that already from the beginning, it's important to work with values and principles and ideas and culture. And a very good example of that is Tetra Pak, which is a very successful company.
Yeah.
And already from the beginning, they started to only recruit people directly from school. that's the only way they've found it being possible to sort of dress these people, dress the leaders of the organization with the right kind of values.
Yeah. I see your point.
And that goes, I think, for many organizations. So you must start with values and culture if you want. Yeah. Otherwise, it won't work.
Then we don't know. We have lots of. Tetra Pak is good with the stories, right? So we know the stories, and I give you. I mean, I agree with you. It's a good example. Part. If you compare that to the situation today, I would say that going for the young people today, directly from school, they are much more not so changeable than they were before. They are so. I mean, I can just look at some of you you are so well educated, and you so. I mean, that is my experience. They are not so formbara. What is the English word for that? That it was. Before. But I give you the point to start from the very beginning. And I think that, but still going back to this little small company that you kind of still work with, and you know the culture and the values and so forth, you still have the problem. You have a person that is regarding performance doing okay, but still has a great impact to the group because it's a negative attitude or whatever doing this way. How do you deal with that problem? And that goes for Tetra Pak too, is that when you come to this high industrial, and I also have been working with this kind of questions in the car business, actually, what you have is you have the specialists there. I mean, for one example that I was working very hard with is what are they called? Verkstadstekniker. You know, they are not so very easy to replace there. So and if it's not possible to have this, because what you can do in a big company, you can just, the first thing is to highlight that this is going in the wrong direction, and then have someone, like I did at SWEP when we had that problem, you would have like an HR or another person like holding that person in their ears and just controlling and spending a lot of time. That's an easy part. That is what I said when it's a bigger company. How do I do as a manager, as a leader, for that matter? And it is impossible, but I think that what it was, because it has to do with that you need to confront the behavior and actually not to have it spread to the other group. So you need to, again, communicate. You need to talk to this person again and again and again. That's a mission impossible because that person is probably old and used to work in that matter. But you need to explain to the group what is happening, why you are, I mean, if you are just 4 of you, and of course then it's not so very open, it's a hidden agenda. But we people, we human beings, we want to know everything. We want to know 100% of everything that we experience or see or whatever we do. And if we don't get the 100%, we start to guess. And we start to imagine. And we do it unconsciously and we do it from the good purpose that if we do not understand the world, I mean, we don't want to go schizophrenia, right, in that matter. We do have this big struggle for understanding what is happening. And if no one is telling me, then it will have an impact on me. You see my point? So I would actually put an effort, have an exit plan for that person, my own hidden agenda, and put the effort in actually talking to the group and working with the group, explaining with the group. Maybe that is what you tried and now I'm a failure, or?
No,
that might be.
It's more like a general example for the smaller company. That
It is.
It is. Sitting here, right?
It is.
It
is.
So when I say it was a failure because that was a good individual sales-wise, right?
Yeah.
The group, we basically in that case, it became so obvious that this guy was contributing but not part of the team. And I think it's a good problem to have a sales guy with that problem rather than a backstage technical, because a sales guy is selling. So
and probably a very extroverted person.
It's probably a good place to have the problem.
Okay. So Steve, you really need to take one situation, one person. I mean, each case for individually, because it really, and you have to make an individual plan. That is one thing for a fact. But that is what I said about this person, that you need to identify how much does it cost. But you need to talk to that person about this. So this it need to be solid and there, and you need to talk to the group. This is actually so you kind of develop the group against that person. You know, this is a nice guy, but still we have these norms, these written norms. He's doing wrong, but we all know how important he is. You're doing very good, very good. You have a lousy attitude. You know, bring it up in open. So then I will understand what is happening. And also, you are showing you as a person. This is what I'm struggling with, you know, and being that open. I think you win more to do that. Does it make any sense? Okay. Yes.
So
now some wise words.
I've seen several hundreds of startups. I've seen those succeeding and I've seen those failing. And some of those failing that were really high potential, they missed out on the market because of these problems. So it took them a year to go bankrupt from a very high potential, profitable company, but they were like 5 or 10 people, and if 1 or 2 is being, I mean, good performers, but not contributing so that you get the synergies. And if you don't take that conflict, the market will be faster, competition will be faster. And those 1 or 2 may be 20 or 25 or 50% of the company. So realize that. Having that is probably a large portion of the company. If you don't take the conflict, what happens outside the company is really crucial. So those companies who have taken the conflicts, but in a long while, it took a year for some of them, they were lucky because competition wasn't there yet. So they succeeded anyway, but they learned a lot during that period.
And I just went back to this picture because it really, this is what is happening here. You know, if you don't solve, and if you're not working with the how and with the norms and with solving the conflicts and being open and so forth, you would probably go down and the rest of the world would go up. Because that is the impact the human factor has to the company. So, good point, Marianne. Where was I? Well, and talking about openness and solving conflicts, I'm not now going to show you one model and I don't know if you read this book. It's, and now I need to write his name down. It's Patrick Lencioni. That was his name. So, I work with a lot of professors at Ekonomihögskolan who is writing all these very clever books about leadership, not so much about, well, some about groups, leadership, strategy, organization, change and everything. So they call Patrick Lencioni, they call him an airport literature. And that is not so very, fine for them, because you can find, all the books you can find at the airport you will find Dan Brown, Lee Child, and Patrick Lencioni. And good for you if you found Patrick Lencioni. He writes, he has a lot of, have you read the book? No. So, it's from the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's a very, very easy read book. So I give them that. He writes all his books starting with a fable. So it's a story, and in this case, it's a story about this woman who starts as a CEO and all the strugglings, all the difficulties that she is dealing with. And then in the end of the book, the theory comes and an assessment tool, assessments. So I've been working with groups, companies, where everything from that, they haven't read the book and I just work with the model, and or they all read the book and they take step by step. So this is a tool for you to do by yourself, or just read the book and get some inspiration. He's written very many books. One book is called Death by Meetings. That is a good book too. So, But this model is very, very solid and very, very valid to work with. So what he says is that when a group or a company is not working, it might have one of these dysfunctions or two that is actually happening in the company. And what he says, and how I work with it, is that everything, and now you recognize the word trust. So if you are developing a company, and you start with this trust issue, and trust is the stuff that I said before, is the psychological security that you had before. I trust, it starts with myself. So here is this personal leadership that I just mentioned, but it's also, we can talk about for a day. It's about self-awareness. It's about, do I trust myself? Because I cannot trust another person if I cannot trust myself first. Because if I do not trust you or myself, and I meet you, my questioning and what was going on in my head is, do you like me? Am I right? Am I doing wrong? Stuff like that. And I would just miss the whole point of meeting another person. And that is the same thing with the company. So we want people who have a good self-awareness, self-confidence, self-trust, and trust themselves. And if I trust myself, now I can start to develop and trust another person. It takes a little while, because you know how it is before I trust. But you do some exercising and some training and some stuff actually to create trust. And you know how it is. This also go back to if you're married or if you have a relationship with anyone, that it starts with the trust. And if we really trust each other, if we are in the company now where we trust each other, now we can be open. Now we are not afraid of conflicts. We are not afraid of opposite views of stuff. We actually embrace it because we dare to have it. We have good meetings where we can say, I don't agree with you, and we're not avoiding the conflicts, we're solving the conflicts. So we have an openness and atmosphere. If we really have this open atmosphere in the group where we trust each other, now we can start to talk about commitment. That we really are committed to the task, to the company, to the group. We are doing this together. We are committed. So if you wake me up in the middle of the night, I tell you, I'm committed to this, because I go full blast with the whole myself there. And if we are really committed, now you can start to talk about accountability, ansvar. You can count on me. I'm responsible for this, and even if I leave the company, if I go out and I am a salesman around the world, you can count on me. I will not leave this company. I'm still loyal because I have all this trust, openness, I can be myself and so forth. And if we're reaching the accountability part where everyone feels that, we'll reach the long-lasting goals. The result is sustainable. The result is excellent instead of just great. Give you another picture to see. You have the dysfunctions here. You have the trust, the conflict, commitment, accountability, and you will see, how do I know? If I am at a company, how do I know that we really are? Well, you will have, like, if you really are trust, and you're really dealing with the trust part, you're actually vulnerable, and you show that. I'm only, like I said before, that with the car example that you gave, I show myself as a human being talking to groups, say, hey, I have a big problems here. I'm worried actually about the future, but I have a strategy for this. So I have some thinking, but I'm too a human being. So if you have a group, like the example I said before with the mission I got with this group, or this company with the working climate atmosphere stuff, that they were not vulnerable. They were just putting a lot of impact in being invulnerable. Don't touch me. Here is my hindrance. Here is my shelter. Don't come near. Don't come near. And the artificial harmony. if you go in there, they were serving people and the customer, everyone, oh, that's a nice clothing, oh, that's nice, oh. Yes, there were women at the company, but also men. Now it sounds like it was only women. We have that problem too. And you will also have the ambiguity and the low standards, so when they will leave the company, you will go like this, they would just put on social media, I had a lousy day today. And the result, they were doing good. They were doing good. They had a good profit, but it was there. It was not that they exceeding excellent. So what I would, you get the picture. What I would like you to do now, if you go back to, even if you have a company with one person or two persons, how do you think you are doing? How do you think, what do you think is, nothing is wrong or right, this is the fact. When I'm working with companies, they will, and then you have a measurement. So you have lots of questions to answer, and then you do a summary, and then you can see, okay, so we need to work with these parts, right? But for you, right now, since we don't have the opportunity to actually make an assessment, if you would do just the thinking, how do you think you're doing, and where do you think you need to put an effort to? So I picked up one comment, and I think that this is not Maslow's, pyramid, that first you do this and then you do this and that, because this is what's going on the whole time, right? So, but if you start from the very beginning, if you have that opportunity, of course, everything starts, there's a purpose with why it is like this, and why trust is such much bigger than the other ones, and the result. So it's also visualizing that this is the great importance, that I would agree with. But when I work with companies, even if I'm the only one, or if I'm two, I have a picture I want to go, especially for you, being startups, you have a picture going forward, so you have something going on. And that's why it's a valid question when I say, so how are you doing? And where do you want to develop, and so forth? Because everything we are doing, that makes sense, that's probably what you... Is there any comments or questions, or... It's solid and it's crystal clear. And my experience is that you could have result when you are measuring this at companies, that you will have a great number, you think you will have a great number with the result, but when it comes to what kind of questions you have in the assessment, you will go like, oh my goodness, it wasn't, because it's from another angle. And what you do is, that is one comment, what you do is that you make the assessment and you get a number, so you will have like single, at 8, 7, 6, something like that. And what we focus on is, if you have an 8, 9, 7, you're doing pretty good. But if you're going down 6, 5, and even 4, 3, then we need to do an action plan. And that is how you do it. So what you do out from the outcome from the assessment, you first you get a picture of what will be my focus, but also you do an action plan. What do we need to actually develop these different parts? Okay, so here is one. Yeah, here is one model. Where that is very useful and is very easy to work with. Another model that is also something that I'm working very much with, but that is more into the interrelation. But I think it's important for you to know. And the interrelation is, and now this picture is in Swedish. I would do it in English. Have you heard about the Faro model before? It is more about the interpersonal relationship within a group, but it's also a very good sign. It also has to do very much with how to manage it. What it says is that when groups or companies or relationship starts, we go through different phases, and we need to work with these phases, and we need in a very profitable way and solid way, so we can force ourselves. Because where the money is, so the English word is, here is inclusion or belonging. Here is control or role seeking. Here is openness or solidarity. There are some stuff here. So, what is important when you start a company, the first question, I mean, if you don't think about what should we do and why and what is the target and so forth, is that you really are striving with the questions. Do I want to do this? Do I want to belong to this idea? Do I want to be a part of this? I mean, more from that has to do with you personally. So you struggle with those questions. And that is the same thing that happens when you meet another person, or when you meet a new guy, you fell in love, and you go like, oh my goodness, is this something for me? And do I really? And what is this? So you have lots of questions in the beginning. That is, do I want to belong here and or not? And you need, as a manager, or you need to answer those questions. You need to give the opportunity for people. And people will react and act in very different ways. Some will be very, very extrovert and telling fisherman stories about themselves and so forth. And some people will be more withdrawn, more like to think and be, first I analyze this and that. So you will meet lots of different things, but you need to understand the kind of questions they need to have the answer to. Then, after a while, it feels pretty good. So you will come into this called the honeymoon phase or idyllic phase, where everything feels nice. Oh my goodness, yes, here is the company, and I know this idea, and this is what we're gonna do. And that feels just great, but only for a little while. Because after that while, here comes the struggle. Here comes the control phase. So what happens now is that people will start to positioning. What is my role? And they start to question the management and the leadership. And it's not about if I want to join the boat or not, it's where is my seat? Where do I sit in this boat? So I have lots of questions, lots of conflicts, lots of stuff that actually need to be sorted out. And then, if we sort that out, we know the Lencioni model, we know, and how to work with it. And then if we sort it out, I come to a new honeymoon phase. We still haven't got any money for it. It's still not so very profitable, this company that we are creating, because it has been a lot of conflicts, it has been a lot of, stuff, but the money comes here. So I have a little nice thing after a while, but then I will eventually come where we actually reach the openness and the communication and so forth. Then happens something new. Maybe we have a new product. Maybe we have a new employee. Maybe we have a new idea. Maybe the competitor is developing something, and maybe something is happening. And every time something is happening, and I mean, yes, we are here doing fine. We will go back to the belonging, the inclusion phase. So if someone new is and going back to there is a change, and it will be like a mess with the group, with the company. So we will all go back to, oh my goodness, this new product, this country. So what's in it for me? And what happens to me? And if you are a good leader, a good manager, you can take, and you have been here, you only have to take the shortcut. Because you will have a group, you will have companies, you will have the culture, the values, everything that is kind of guiding that person or the new idea from a competitor or whatever that might be into that with the openness. So you go like this. Groups that are stuck, they're not solving anything, they're not being open, they're not showing their vulnerability, their insecurity about what is happening in the world. So they are kind of being stuck here. They have to take the long path. So they will go like here. But if you reach here and you do it. So, who is in charge? Well, you are, as a company owner, or as a manager, or as the leader. You are responsible to actually drive the group through the different phases. And here is why this picture it shows makt, that is power, handledarskap, tutoring, or auktoritet, authority. That it has to do with how you act, because you need to change your style and your guiding. A great example is if you think about groups, companies being immature, growing, being more and more mature, if you do the right stuff, right, with a company, you can actually make a clear comparison with children. So a very immature child, that I used to have that when my children was 3, 5, 2, stuff like that. So what I needed to do was actually to tell them, go to bed, brush your teeth. No, we don't do this here. No, off with your bones and legs and whatever. Just using my power to actually guide them. And here is where they come. Here are the norms here. Here's what we do, what we don't do. Brush your teeth, and so forth. Okay, so they grew up eventually. So now I have a teenager at home. A pretty mature person. Well, we can discuss that, but he's 17, so he's here somewhere. If I would say to him, go to bed, brush your teeth, what will happen when I told him? Well, I would have something like I have when I'm not so good parenting. I would go like, what do you care? Or, whoa, like it's more the language he speaks. I don't understand everything. But it's not like we're doing very fine in this, because he would go like, get off of my back. You don't care about it, So, but if I more like, so okay, the time is close to 12 now, and you have school tomorrow morning. What are you thinking? What do you think about that? More tutoring. That doesn't work so well either, just that example. But anyway, so tutoring is more, we discuss it, we make plans, I gave him the whole picture, and I asked him, what do you think about it? It's tutoring, because he's doing, I still have to be there, but he's doing, and that is actually going more smoothly. So that is why it says tutoring there, and that is with your company and with your groups too. And then I have one person that is 25 and lives not at home anymore. But if I would call him during the night and say, well, hey, you're answering the phone, it's close to 11, you have school tomorrow, what do you think about that? I mean, the tutoring style. That wouldn't work out so very well either. He would go like, who are you? What are you doing? Get off my back. None of my business. I'm a grown up now. But I'm there for him. So if he called me and asked me, so how do I wash my jeans, or what temperature was it? Stuff like that. I'm there for him. Because he knows I'm authority, but I'm there. It's not that I'm getting off his back. It's the same thing with companies. It's the same thing with groups. Going from immaturity to maturity. See? So let's have a little discussion about this. This is the FIRE model. Is it doable for you? Is this something for you to think about? Talk about that for a little while. But a person who developed, the FIRE model has been developed. You will find persons who would say that it's not a gap, the group is going like that the whole time, or the gap is small. And you have also this man, Tuckman, who developed the forming, norming, storming, performing. And you have one researcher who is doing very great and is world famous, the leader today, I would say, when it comes to this, is Susan Whelan. And what she did was developing the FIRE model out from who are we, where are we going, how do we go there, and also with the measurement. Going back to what I said before, we do all this stuff, we need to have an assessment and see how we are doing. What I wanted to show you is that she identified the T keys to productivity for companies. What is important. And you see them there. It's no rocket science, but it's nice to to have the 10 bullets still, and this is also what you work with different action plans and methods. So the goals are important, roles, the interdependence, leadership, communication and feedback, discussion, decision-making and planning, implementation, evaluation, norms and individual differences, structure, coming back to that, cooperation and conflict management. A very nice summary of the two different models that I just showed you, the Lencioni and the pyramid, and also the FIRE model, how you actually work with a company to achieve productivity. The structure is 3, and they are important for creating structure and successful teams. The successful teams is also what we call the high-performing teams. So here is also often a very question, this is about groups, but I will always get this question, how big should a group be, or a company, or when do we start to scale it, and when do we start to, when do we take these different steps? And here is what I just mentioned in the beginning. Anima is on an edge where they really need to think about how do we scale to actually achieve the growth. So you need to look at the organization and also the step further down. And that's a step to take, a discussion to make that takes a little time. When it comes to groups, so of course the numbers is 8 to 12, right? Because that is what we learn now. And I think that is a good number to strive for. Even if when you're scaling and when you're developing your company, that you have departments or you have areas where actually you will have someone in the lead for that actually could work with the group and so forth. This is not the reality. I think I meet more companies that want to be a flat organization or groups where you have a manager who have like 20, 30 people too. But to scale that, I really advise you to do that. You can do that in very many different ways, and the timing to do that is also different. So, we believe in subgroups. We believe that is something good. So members are able, that is a sign of a good group. I can experience where we go like, oh, this is not so very good, we have a subgroup there, and that means that the group is, or the company is splitting out. But the difference is that the subgroup is working out very nicely if they are accepted and if they are appreciated even with the company or the group. And that has to do with, coming back to the car business, it has to do with openness. What do they do? What are they talking about? And if you kind of give them a mission, or you give them something to work with, or you talk about it when you come in open, you can see that groups, companies are doing pretty good. Give them a project, give them something that they then come and report. It's the same thing with individual development. Make it open. And that teams have sufficient time together. Going back to this meeting, the numbers slide that I showed you in the beginning. We don't want meeting for meeting's sake. We want actually, and I tell you, this is an issue with the meetings, because we think that it's very easy to, it's important to meet and face-to-face and so forth. You can handle that and develop that in very many different ways. Going back to the S-curve, where I have it here. What you want to achieve when you are developing your companies is that you want to be aware that this is actually the truth. I'm growing, there is the time, and the company will come to this. But the high-performing teams, as I said before, goes like this. And reaching a total success. What you can do, and what is important, and the sooner you start with that, and I was into that, giving you the HR processes there, what we're talking about, is something that we call workforce planning. So I'm starting here. I want to reach there. I am aware that the curve goes like this. the sooner you start to identify, connected with the competitors or to the surrounding worlds, what kind of competence you do not need, you do need right now, especially what you need in the future. If you could have a little eye to where are we going and what kind of competence do we need to actually reach that. That might be a crazy idea. I would just do this, and then, for example, I need to globalize, or I need to have more experts, or I need to have this technical. Don't do something about that thought that you have. It might be a dream, it might be some maybe or something, but have that as concrete as possible. So you will say to yourself, in the future I might be needing something. So you start to have that in your mind. That would help you out totally here, because you have something, some idea, and you know where to find those people, how far away are they, how long time do they take to, especially if you go to specialists or whatever. So the word workforce planning, have that in mind. That is also crucial for startups, I would say. And most of, maybe we just say, well, it's just an idea, or maybe it's a dream. You need to dream high and reach for the sky, and don't feel ashamed that you actually are thinking about an expert or a specialist or whatever. That will help you a lot. So my plan was for you to look at this curve and have a discussion about what you need to do wherever you are right now to actually reach for the sky and reach to develop high-performing team and also a great growing company going global or whatever. So shall we take just some seconds and for yourself, not in a discussion, but just some, so I really feel like this is, you get the question, right? Question. You get the question. I need you to force yourself out from this, or if you are there, you see that you are a startup, you will do fine. What do you need? Maybe there's something from this seminar that you just heard. Maybe you got an idea for something else, that this is really what I need to focus on. Give yourself 30 seconds and think about it. What do you need to focus on and think about? My advice is for you is going back to what we have been talking about, is actually to put an impact on the first picture that I wrote for you, to identify and to talk about this, especially the why. To identify the culture, the core values, and the values and the culture, and what is the core wordings for you. I'd like to add what we call personal leadership. That is about how you reach empowerment with a group, but also for yourself. So the takeaway that I want to give you is that have a little, work with the reflections, talk to yourself about your own vulnerability, about trusting yourself, take personal leadership, and that is what you want to establish with the company, that you want to reach empowerment, you want people to work with themselves and be going from that. Of course, you have the group development and you have the organizational matters. That was the culture and stuff like that. But you also need to, all this soft care that we have, core that we have talked about today, you need to think it from a structured way, to have strategies. I think we people have a tendency, we human beings have a tendency to get, even those who are engineers and stuff, we are very much irrational people that is very much striving with our feelings. So we need to embrace that and think more logically and more structured in that way.
See how it went. So the expectations that you have, models, tools, is that something that you said that, right? You get some.
Yeah, absolutely.
So international growth global. What did we mentioned that, right? Now you just want to get rid of me, so you go like, yeah, we have lots of things. How to achieve cooperation growth well. A little bit. Healthcare business, no.
No, that was just my private thought.
Okay, but that was interesting. It's a cliffhanger, right? To be continued, hopefully. Perfect team, created with right people helping measure that. A little bit, right? You had the HR processes that you can bear in mind, and you also have these different, preferably we talked about the attitude and the culture and the values and so forth. And recruiting, we have a little touchdown with that too. And what I added to it was this workforce planning. So my experience is that if you start from wherever you are now, even if you're 1, 5, or whatever, and you manage to find strategies and processes around all this that we call soft core, then you can actually reach the star. If you lose that part, then you will not, maybe you will not be a failure, but you will do good. And you want to do great. Thank you for listening.